In this video, I'm going to show you how to very simply and quickly containerize a website, a HTML website using Docker and kind of run it in its own container. So really quickly, just to visualize what we're doing here. So on our host machine, what we can do is we can create a Docker container which has its own environment. So in this case, we'll run it in a Ubuntu environment, and inside of that miniaturized operating system, we'll run an Apache web server which serves our website. So Docker essentially provides the ability to kind of package up and run any application in a isolated manner. So even though we're running it in our host machine, it's kind of isolated so that we can kind of very easily deploy any application in this kind of isolated manner. Our host machine could run a number of Docker containers, kind of miniaturized virtual machines, you can kind of think of them as. We could have a Docker container with a Windows environment, also running another Apache web server. We could have a Docker container running another Apache web server within a Linux CentOS environment. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing here. So let's get straight to the code. I am using a virtual machine. I'm using an Ubuntu virtual machine here. So when I say host machine, I'm actually talking about another virtual machine which is actually inside of my host machine, which is also a Linux machine actually. So a bit confusing actually. So this is essentially what we're going to end up with. Let me get rid of this. Right, so this is what we're going to end up with. Right, we're going to end up with a Docker container inside of a VM, which is inside of my machine. But anyway, it doesn't really make any difference how many virtual machines you've got this running inside of. So I'm in my virtual machine, and I'm inside of a directory called Docker Web. Now, in order to create a Docker image and therefore run a Docker container, we need to start off with a base operating system. So over here, we need our Docker container needs to basically have all the necessary kind of setup in order to run this Apache web server. So that Apache web server can't run by itself. It needs to run within an operating system within a certain environment. So we're going to set that environment up first. In order to kind of build a Docker container, we use a Dockerfile. So we specify all the configurations inside of the Dockerfile. Make sure that the Dockerfile has a capital D, and then the rest of it is lowercase. So I'm going to use the Vim editor to run this, or to edit this and to create this file. So we're going to start off with a command Ubuntu from Ubuntu latest as base image. So what I'm saying here is I'm going to use an already created, already defined image, which will kind of have the bare bones Ubuntu operating system, and then from there we'll then configure this Ubuntu system or container to then run our Apache server. So in order to, what we're going to need to do is obviously install some packages. So we use the run command to execute our commands inside of the container. So we're going to do apt update, and then we're going to do apt install Apache 2. So so this is going to run this command inside of our container once we spin it up. What we then need to do is we need to copy the source code into the correct folder. So the Apache web server will look for the HTML files in this particular directory, right? So I'm copying it from the current context, so the current Docker context. Let me just save and quit this. So, whoops. So in this directory, I've got the Dockerfile, which we'll use to which Docker will use to build the image, but we've also got here a directory called site. Now this contains my actual source code for the HTML website, so it needs to be in this folder, the same folder as the Dockerfile, in order for us to access it inside of here, inside of this Dockerfile, to be able to actually copy it into the Docker image. I hope that made sense. So we're going to copy the site. So this specifies the path of the file or the directory, and then this specifies the destination. So we're going to copy it from this current machine, the current VM, into the var www/html inside of the Docker container. I then need to make sure that this container doesn't just stop as soon as it runs the Apache server. So we just need to do something here to execute a command to make sure that the Apache server runs in the foreground. So user sbin what is it, Apache control D, and then we're going to run it in the foreground. So what this line basically does, it's a command which tells the Apache server to kind of stay active and keep serving the website as long as the container is running. If Apache didn't do this, then the container would think that there's nothing to do and it would just shut down. There are some other things that we can do, but that's pretty much it. We're going to just change the working directory inside of the container to where our HTML file is, and then we're going to basically tell the container to listen to port 80. Right, this is the standard port that port 80 is a default port for web traffic or for HTTP, which our website will use. So that's pretty much it for the Dockerfile. We now need to build the image. So we're going to do docker build. So we're going to build the image. We're going to use the -t option to give it a name. We're going to call it my website. And then we're going to specify the path to the Dockerfile, which in this case is in this particular directory. So we're going to do that, and it should go ahead and execute the commands that we specified in the file. So it loaded the Ubuntu base image from the Docker library, the Docker repository, and then went ahead and ran our command here. Updated the apt package manager and installed the Apache 2 web server, and then copied the site into the correct folder so Apache knows where to find it, where to find our source code for the website, and then it switched directories and exposed port 80. So now we've got the Docker image. So if we run Docker images, we can see now, okay, we've got an image ID here, and we've got the repository which I called my website. Oh, why did it say created 40 minutes ago? Perhaps it was when I was setting up this, doing the setup for this video. But anyway, let's just see if we've got any. Okay, yeah, we don't have any Docker containers. So we've got an image. Now we want to create a container using that image. So it will basically take this image, which contains all the configuration needed, and it will spin up an actual instance of this this Linux Ubuntu operating system, which contains the website, the Apache web server inside of it. So in order to do this, we're going to use the docker run command. We're going to run it in the background, which is specified by this -d. And let me just think. Before we do that, let's get the IP address of the VM. So obviously the Docker container is being run inside of the VM. So I just need the IP address of that VM. Where is it? There you go. I'm just going to copy this. Let me just put it here, just so. Right, so we're going to do docker run in the background. We're going to use this capital P, which will automatically assign the port the port number that will be connected to in this virtual machine, and then we're going to give it my website. Okay, so we've got the ID here. All right, so this is the ID of the container. So if we do docker ps, we can see that we've got my website. The container ID it kind of shows the first few characters of here. Right, this is the container ID, and it's connected to our virtual machine using through this 32771 port. So what we can do is we can go to this IP address, right? So we can go to the IP of the VM, and then we're going to access the port 32771, which should be where this Docker container is kind of essentially located, I guess you could think of it as. So as you can see, we've got a website here. So the website is inside of this this container, which is kind of being run inside of our VM, and it's connected via port 32771. So every time 32771, so whenever we try and access our virtual machine through this port, we're going to be able to see our container running. So just to prove that this website is actually in our running in our Docker container, we'll go back here. Let's do docker stop Alright, so we're going to stop our Docker container here, and then we'll try and reload the page, and we'll see if indeed it has stopped. Okay, so let's just do it then. Docker stop. Is it Docker stop? I can't actually remember now if it's Docker remove. Let's just have a quick look. Yeah, okay, so Docker stop, yeah, so it stops the Docker image. So that is a very quick tutorial on how to get a HTML website running in a Docker container. I've assumed that obviously you've already got Docker installed and all that kind of stuff. If you haven't, then you can go to the Docker, I don't know where it is, there you go, Docker install documentation. Make sure you install Docker Engine, that's what I did, and then you can kind of utilize Docker inside of your host machine or virtual machine. So like I said, this was a really quick overview of how to use Docker. In subsequent videos, in future videos, I'll go a lot more into detail about how Docker works and you know what we can do with it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, take it easy, and see you soon.